Hola Year 9, so this is our first online lesson of this year. So we're going to be starting a new topic, which is la comida, all about food, and las bebidas, which are drinks. In today's lesson, you need to be able by the end of the lesson to be able to name some different food and drink items in Spanish, as many as we can. We're going to get to know some phrases then to say what we eat or drink usually, and also talk about when Spanish people eat, because they eat a little differently to us in terms of their structure of their day. To complete all the activities in this lesson, there is a worksheet which you will find if you scroll down below the video. If you click on that to download it, make sure you save it once you've completed it, and then you're going to, once you've done all the activities in today's video lesson, upload that worksheet to add submission. I'll say it again, you must make sure you save it, because sometimes people upload blank documents to us because they don't save their work before they upload it, okay? Right, so once you've got your worksheet, you can continue with this video. So pause, get your worksheet ready. You can either print it and write on it on paper and then take a photo, but it's probably easier to just complete it online. It's much easier to upload it that way. So first of all, we've got some words here that are all different foods or drinks in Spanish that either you might have seen if you've been on holiday to Spain, because they're common things people order, or they're things that look a lot like the English. So I reckon everybody will be able to work out at least half of these, maybe more. So pause the video. You don't need to write anything down. Just have a think about what you think these are. Right, so you've had a little time to think now. So let's go through them. So queso is cheese. Probably didn't know that one is a bit less familiar. Café, coffee. Tomate, obviously is tomato. Atún, if we stick this A to the end, it's tuna. Hamburguesa, hamburger. Patatas fritas, literally fried potatoes. So in other words, chips. Limonada, lemonade. Tortilla. Now you might have thought tortilla as in thinking about tortilla chips like Doritos, or a tortilla as in a wrap, but that's more associated with the Spanish of places like Mexico. In Spain, a Spanish tortilla is a very thick omelette with things like potatoes in it. That is a very traditional Spanish breakfast. Helado means ice cream. Agua is water. Jamón, you might remember from the French, jambon is ham, and they eat a lot of ham in Spain. Té is tea. Chocolate, chocolate. Cerveza is beer. Cereales, cereal. And pan, you might remember the French, pain, is bread. Okay? So the first activity on your worksheet, you've got this list of English foods and drinks, and what you need to do is write down the correct Spanish next to it. So what you can do is skim read these. Have a look. So we've got la fruta. If I skim down, I can see that's probably fruit. So on my worksheet, I'll write fruit, la fruta next to it. La ensalada, that one looks like a lot like the English too. When I come to las verduras, that's less obvious, so I'd probably leave that one and come back to it. So hopefully there are 17 there. Hopefully you'll be able to work out at least 10 of them, but maybe a few more by process of elimination, and then there may be a few that you've still left blank at the end. That's okay. So pause the video, fill in as many as you can, and when you're ready to check them, unpause. Let's go through these, and I want you to now say the words after me as well to practice the pronunciation. It's really important. You might feel silly at home repeating them, but if you don't, you're likely first of all to learn the wrong pronunciation, and also they're less likely to stick in your head and really learn these, which we're going to need to know for future lessons. So, la fruta. So repeat after me, la fruta. That one is fruit. La ensalada. So I hope you repeated there, that's salad. Las verduras. Vegetables. La carne. So make sure you're repeating. La carne you might have heard of from chili con carne. It literally means chili with meat. Okay. Las naranjas. So let's try that sound again there. Las naranjas. Good, so that's oranges. Las patatas fritas. You know, our chips. El pescado. So think about the Welsh pysgod. That looks a bit like this. They come from the same, the Latin there, that means fish. Las hamburguesas. That's a long one. Let's break that up again. Las hamburguesas. Good. So hamburgers. El agua. It's water. El café. El té. La cerveza. El vino blanco. El vino tinto. El zumo de naranja. Okay, so we've just gone through a few drinks there. Tea, beer. So we've got the words blanco, which means white. Tinto means like dyed or tinted. We've got vino for wine. Zumo de naranja. So that is literally juice of orange. We could change that to something else. El atún. So tuna, and then la sopa. And here's a few others you can add to the bottom of your sheet, okay? So toast is tostadas. Eggs are huevos. So let's try those. Tostadas. Huevos. 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 Un bocadillo. So that's a sandwich. If I was going to say a cheese sandwich, I'd say un bocadillo de queso. The last one then, queso, cheese, okay? So just going to run over a couple of very Spanish typical foods now. You can add them to your sheet if you wanted to. So they eat a lot of el pollo, which means chicken. So if you eat lots of chicken in your meals, you can add that. And then you might recognize this dish. This is la paella. So we would say la paella, but it should be pronounced paella. We know double L in Spanish is a Y sound. So paella or paella is a dish that's made of rice, which is normally spicy, and then they put saffron in it, which makes it orange looking or yellow rice. And it's usually with seafood, so things like octopus or fish or squid. But sometimes you will get a chicken paella if you prefer to seafood. It's sometimes cooked in a massive, massive dish, which is probably about the size of your dining table in terms of its width or something like that. If you've come across it in a market, they'll cook it in huge dishes like that, and it smells amazing. I mentioned earlier in Spain they eat a lot of el jamón, ham, but not in the sense like we would eat a lot of cooked ham. They eat a lot of cured ham, so dried meat that's been safe to eat but not cooked. And this here is el jamón serrano, so you'll get a huge leg of ham, and then you just take slices off it, and it's on a wooden stand then they would have in their house, the actual leg. It's quite expensive depending on where you buy it from and if you buy the whole leg, but it is a lot more expensive than normal ham. El queso, then they eat a lot of cheese in Spain, and one you might have heard of, which is a very famous Spanish cheese, is manchego cheese. And then el pan, so whereas we would buy sliced loaves of bread, they don't buy much of that in Spain. Normally in Spain they have more rustic like loaves, baguettes, that sort of thing, and they do a lot of things like these brochetas, where they will get a slice of baguette, sort of toast it or bread, and then they will sometimes rub garlic over it, especially in a place called Catalonia. They'll put some olive oil over it and then mashed up tomatoes and basil on the top. So that's a very typical Spanish starter or side dish. Then they eat a lot of another type of cured meat, which are different types of salchichas, so different types of sausage. So they do eat cooked sausages like this, which look a little different to ours. They're normally quite like spicy, but they eat a lot of something called, you probably heard of chorizo, or people here pronounce it chorizo. So this is a cured meat again, things a bit like salami, a bit like pepperoni. So they eat a lot of meats like that. Okay, so Spanish meal times then. In Spain, they nearly always have 4 meals a day. They don't tend to have breakfast as soon as they wake up. Very traditionally, they'll have a bigger breakfast later on. So el desayuno is what they call breakfast. Let's try that. El desayuno. Good. Then el almuerzo is lunch. So because they've had quite a late breakfast, they'll often have quite a late lunch. And in Spain, because especially most of Spain, it's very hot during the middle of the day and the afternoon, they have a very long lunch breaks where schools will shut and shops will shut. So if you go out in the middle of the day in Spain and you want to go to a shop, you might find that it's closed for a couple of hours because people have gone home for a siesta, for a nap, and for lunch because it's so hot there. Then what they will later have when they finish work or finish school is la merienda. So let's try those two. El almuerzo, la merienda. And then their dinner, their evening meal, la cena, is very late into the evening because all of their meals are pushed on, and it's so still warm into the evenings. They've had their siesta in the afternoon. They tend to stay up a lot later than us. So prime time TV, where all the soaps and things are for us, we'd normally watch around 5, 6. In Spain, they're all on around 9, 10 at night. You might be surprised if you go out for food around 5, 6, 7 in Spain, you will start to see people not arriving until 7, 8, 9 o'clock for their evening meal. So this is more traditional of the times they have their meals in Spain. We'll learn a little bit more about that in a couple of lessons' time. So not only have we learnt now the words breakfast, lunch, snack and dinner, they also have its own verb. So whereas I would have to say I have breakfast, there is a specific verb to mean to have breakfast. So desayunar means to have breakfast. Almorzar means to have lunch. Merendar means to have a snack. And cenar means to have dinner. So we have to put the noun, dinner, snack, and so on with have. I have a snack. Merendar means to have a snack. And all of these end in AR. And we know all verbs in Spanish end in AR, IR, or ER. And we've learnt that these last two letters mean to, or it's the equivalent of that. So to have dinner. So if we go back here, desayunar means to have breakfast. But if I change the AR to an O, and put a different ending on, I've made that I have breakfast, because we've learned it's the end of the verb that tells you who's doing the action. So to say I have lunch, I'm going to change this AR to an O, but this is one of those weird verbs we call radical change in verbs, where sometimes the middle will also change. So this changes to a UE here. Almuerzo, I have lunch. Meriendo, I have a snack. So this one here hopefully you can work out. Take off the AR, add an O, ceno, I have dinner. And we've learnt, like I said, that the O tells me who's doing the action. That's the I, and each person has their own endings. If you've got your book at home, you could look back to when we learnt the present tense at those different endings and tell me a different person. Or maybe you remember one of them if you don't have your book. So if you want to pause and have a little look back, or even Google Spanish present tense verb endings and see if you can work out a different person. So you might have found, for example, take off the AR and add on a different person. If I wanted to say we add amos. Desayunamos, we eat breakfast. If it was desayunar, he eats breakfast. Desayunan, they eat breakfast, and so on. Okay? Right, so let's practice these a little bit. So on your worksheet, what I'd like you to do now is to fill in the missing letters in the Spanish. Now, don't worry, you will have forgotten some. We've only seen these words a little bit, and if you didn't repeat them, they're even less likely to have stuck in your head. So have a go, first of all, at filling in the blanks as much as you can. If you want to rewind the video when you've had a little turn, then you can, and remind yourself and come back to it again. Otherwise, you can see how much you can do at the end. And also, what do they all mean? So what is el des something, un something in English, okay? And then what is this verb to something, I something? So here's the English muddled up, just to remind you. Pause the video and fill in as much as you can before you come back and check your answers. Okay, so the first one is missing this. So el desayuno is breakfast. And then the missing letters here, desayunar, to have breakfast. Desayuno, I have breakfast. The noun is the same as the I spelling, look. El almuerzo is lunch. almorzar, to have lunch. Almuerzo, I have lunch. La merienda is a snack. Merendar, to have a snack. Meriendo, I have a snack. So pause if you're needing to check these corrections and I'm going too fast. You take as long as you need, okay? Try and correct your answers in another colour if you can as well. And then finally, la cena is the evening meal or dinner. Cenar, to have your evening meal. Ceno, I have dinner. Or I have an evening meal. Okay, so make sure you pause and make sure you've got all those correct or write the correct answers next to them. And then we'll move on. So if I was asking you, ¿qué desayunas? So I've taken desayunar, taken off the ea and added the u ending here. So what do you have for breakfast? ¿Qué desayunas? So if I was going to say I have fruit, I would say desayuno, I have. And then would I add on cereales, fruta, huevos, or salchichas? That's an easy one, it's fruta. We're just going to have a look at how we put them in a sentence. Just to remind you, cereales obviously cereals. Huevos they are eggs. Salchichas, that was sausages. Okay? Right, if I wanted to add something onto this, I could use the word con. Desayuno fruta con. Is it yogur? That's a new one. Cereales, jamón, or salchichas. Obviously it's cereales, but the important word we're looking at here is the word con. That means with. So I eat fruit with cereal would be desayuno fruta con cereales. Okay? I could also use the link word y. So I could say desayuno fruta con cereales y, which means and. Now, is toast, tostadas, un bocadillo, queso, or huevos? So obviously tostadas. I put nice easy ones there just for us to have a look at these link words, con and y. So un bocadillo, just to recap, a sandwich, queso, cheese, and huevos are eggs. Okay? So we're going to see some sentences like this. On your worksheet, you've got a reading text here. So it's by somebody called Maria. She gives her age, tengo 14 años. And then she says normalmente, normally, and she goes on to talk about what she eats. So como means I eat. And hopefully later on in the text you can work out what I drink is. So what I want you to do now is pause the video and answer the questions on your worksheet in English. You don't need to answer in full sentences, just simply type or write the answer in English. They all go in order of the text and it's all vocabulary that we have seen today. So flick back earlier in the lesson if you need to, if there's anything you've forgotten. Okay, so you should by now have answered all 6 questions. So let's go through it. So how old is Maria? Me llamo Maria, tengo 14 años. So hopefully you remember that 14 is 14. Normalmente, para el desayuno, como los huevos o los cereales. What does she eat for breakfast? You've got breakfast here. Huevos are eggs, cereales, cereal. Okay, and this letter O, you might have guessed, that means O. Where does she have lunch? So almuerzo, we know is I have lunch. En el colegio, so we can guess that means in school. You might have put in college, but if you think back to when we did year 8 French, collège is the French for school, not college. Okay. What does she drink at lunch? So if I carry on, this is about lunch. If I keep reading, como una hamburguesa, well, it's not something you drink, y patatas fritas, y bebo, I don't know what this word is, but I've got limonada after, so I'm going to guess this means I drink, and it's lemonade, okay? Okay, so number 5 then, what does she have for dinner? So if I know that dinner is cena, so if I skim reading here, I can see merienda, that's snacks, so I need to read further on. La cena, there's dinner. Como el pescado. Okay, so we've seen these words today. So pescado, fish, pollo, chicken, ensalada looks like the English. So salad, and our link words there, fish or chicken, con with salad. And what does she have for dessert? Well, the last thing left, we don't know el postre yet, we haven't learnt that. But the last thing left is this word helado. So con ensalada y helado. So it's the only word there you would recognise that we learned earlier today's lesson, which was ice cream. Okay, so make sure you've marked those on your worksheet. You could copy and paste a green tick in from Google, or you could put a green dash in there, or purple because you're marking your own. Okay, on to the next reading activity then, your last reading. On your worksheet, you've got these Spanish phrases and these English here. They're all muddled up. So there are some things from today's lesson to recap and a couple of questions that we might be able to work out from what we've done in today's lesson. And then a few phrases to help us in a future lesson. So just beginning to build up a bit more vocabulary for describing what we eat. You might use them in our next activity, but as well as ordering food in a future lesson. So all you need to do is match them up. You can draw lines, but if that's going to get a bit complicated, then there's space for you to put in the letters here. So if you think el primer plato is I eat, then you would put D there. Doesn't mean that, but if that's what you thought. Okay, so pause the video and take as long as you need. Any you're not sure of, just leave blank, but try and do at least half of them. Okay, so el primer plato, we've got a couple there with the word plato. El primer plato, el segundo plato. So hopefully you can work out that this one is primer, looks a bit like primero, premier. We know it's anything to do with first. Okay, so first course. Como we learnt earlier means I eat. That's D. Desayuno, we already know, means I have breakfast or breakfast. El segundo plato, the second course. So that looks a bit like second there. We've learnt plato. It looks a bit like plate, doesn't it? My first plate, my first dish is going to be this, whatever it is. Ceno, so for dinner I eat, or I have, for dinner I have dinner. Almuerzo, for lunch I eat. And then we've got questions here. We know there's questions because of the upside down question mark at the start and obviously the one at the end. And then we've got words that link to almuerzo, ceno, and desayuno. So what do you have for lunch? That's J. What do you have for dinner? E. What do you have for breakfast? I. And then the last one, we've got el primer plato there. Como, I eat. So para el primer plato, como, for the first course, I eat. Okay, so check those and then you'll be ready to move on to our last activity. So what we're going to do now is escribir, which means writing. And you're going to put everything together that we've looked at today and describe what you eat for breakfast, lunch and dinner normally. Now obviously we don't eat the same things all the time, so you can use these words here, normalmente or generalmente, to say what you usually or normally eat. You could also, instead of just using I eat, change the end of the verb. This is an ER verb, so I'm not saying comamos, but comemos, into a different ending. Say we eat. So como, I eat, comemos, we eat. Okay. If you've got your book at home, then you can use anything else in your book to help you with the present tense. You could use an online dictionary to add extra detail, but please don't use Google Translate. We can tell straight away when a sentence has been Google translated, because either it'll make a mistake or you try something that we haven't learnt before that is just a bit too tricky for your level. So use something like wordreference.com if there's something you want to know, like a food we haven't looked at today. Or if you're putting a single word into Google Translate, sometimes that works okay, but not a full sentence, okay? So before you start writing, have a look at this sheet, this slide as well. So we've got here some other words, like if you always eat a certain thing, or sometimes, or never. And I put those phrases there for you to use again. And then also we've got some opinions. We know I like and I don't like, I prefer, I hate. There's two different ways to say it there. We've got a couple of others that you could use. So me cae fatal means I just can't stand. So you might say something like, I don't eat breakfast, I can't stand breakfast, if you never have it in the morning, okay? Or you could talk about what you have for a certain meal, but say, my favourite food is, or my favourite drink is, mi comida favorita es, mi bebida favorita es. And then we've got the phrases I eat and I drink. So you should have, unless it's a particular food or drink we haven't learned today, you should have everything here without needing to look at dictionaries. So you've got your food list on your worksheet and the phrases to say breakfast and lunch and dinner, and then all the opinions and time phrases here. Try and link your sentences, so it's not just a big long list of bullet pointed sentences, but it makes sense in linked paragraphs. Include what you like and don't like, and perhaps you could give a reason. We're next lesson going to be looking at reasons. So I like chocolate because it's delicious or something, but if you want to try and add any reasons on today, then you can. So pause the video now and take some time to fill in the space on your worksheet to write your answer. Really, we should be aiming for at least around about 40 words, but you might write slightly less, you might write more, that's okay. Okay, so you should by now have your worksheet completed with all of the different reading and match activities and your writing. So because you've now completed that writing, you can name food and drinks items in Spanish. You can say what food and drinks you like. Our other objective was to understand about times that Spanish people eat, but you've also included time phrases in your writing if you've used the always, sometimes, and so on. Okay, so well done, Year 9. Upload that now to add submission. So remember, you need to scroll down below the video. You should see a little grey box, I think it is, that says add submission. Make sure you save your work before you upload it so that myself and Mr. Cullerton can mark your writing and send those back to you. Okay, muy bien, buena suerte, and we will see you for your next online lesson.